I am. Hi, Bron.
Hello. Okay, folks, I think, oh no, I'll wait for 2 minutes because it's still only just before 12. So I'll just wait those last couple of minutes so that other people can arrive, and then I'll say something about the meeting. I'll just run through what our little agenda is for today, and then I'll introduce Franz, who wants to say something at the outset for us all. At least I don't know where you all are, but where I am, it's absolutely beautiful day today. It's unbelievably nice. It says in my part of town, which is near St Albans, that on Friday it's going to snow. I'm like, really? Can't quite believe that, but apparently that's what they're telling me. So we'll wait and see if that happens, I guess. Okay. I'm sure at some point during this presentation, some Amazon person will arrive and, you know, batter down my door. The dogs will start barking, the neighbours will have an argument or something like that. All the joys of the online world. Okay, well, it's now midday, so I'm going to start this launch officially, if I can. And what I'd like to do, first of all, is to thank you all very, very warmly for attending today. This is a soft launch, if you like, of the SSPP Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Strategy. And it's a soft launch because ideally what we had intended to do was have a wonderful in-person launch in the exchange space of Bush House, where we were going to invite everyone, have guest speakers who would talk about our work and the agenda of improving equality, diversity and inclusion. And also to have a celebration and a drinks event and something that would be really enjoyable for everyone. But unfortunately, of course, circumstances are such. Online participant has joined. Okay. Well, let's hope that's not a Zoom bomber. Someone might be able to take care of that. So we are in constrained circumstances, but what we did really want to do was to launch this really important strategic plan before Christmas. We've been working on this now for nearly a year, and we thought it was really important to get this into the public domain for everybody to be able to see and comment on, and so that we can get feedback as we take this work forward over the coming year, beginning in January 2021, which will be just around the corner. And you're just not going to believe this, but right on cue, there is now going to be an Amazon. So what I would like to do is, I guess, first of all, say something, if I can, about the fact that how we began this work, or how we began to set about what we were doing. So the way that we did this was that in January of 2019, Franz, who's the executive dean, approached me about whether I would be prepared to lead a workshop on equality, diversity and inclusion and begin to develop a formal strategy on this work. And I thought it was incredibly important to do that because it's such a vital and important part of what we do as a university, to create a supportive space in which all of our participants can thrive regardless of their particular circumstances or characteristics. So to do that, I set up a new EDI committee for SSPP, and we have worked together on a work stream model, so trying to develop a series of work streams that address what we think are the core and have been rather intransigent concerns that we have had around EDI in this faculty for some while, and to create 6 work streams to address those specifically. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit more about what those work streams are and who leads them, and the work stream leads are going to say a couple of words about their own work stream and how they're going to develop it in the coming year in a moment. But before I do that, I was asked, Franz asked me directly if it would be okay by me for him to say a few words about the launch of this strategic plan in the faculty, and I very much welcome him today. Issue, and I know he wanted to say a few words at the outset. So, Franz, I'll to you for a moment, if I may, and then our introduction leads. So over to you, Franz.
Thanks, Bron. Thank you very much. I did think it was important that, you know, as the Dean, I also was here and said something at the beginning just to reinforce the fact that this is a landmark moment for the faculty, and this is completely intrinsic to who we are as a university, but also as a faculty. I mean, I think although we've been addressing structural problems of inclusion and diversity for many years, up until now, and this was the reason the senior leadership team asked Bron to set up this work, is that we've really failed to take a systematic approach. And the only way in which we're going to really make progress is by taking a truly systematic approach. And I take some of the blame for that myself. I think as social scientists, we often assume that because many of us research or teach about social difference, about discrimination, about prejudice, about efforts to achieve more justice and equality in the world or in our fields, we're somehow exempt from putting our own house in order. And that's a mistake, which I've come to recognize as time has gone on. But we do know that many in our community, staff and students, experience prejudice and exclusion at work and also outside work, of course, and that affects all of us. We still score quite poorly, for instance, on the proportion of women professors, although we've made some progress on attainment gaps, for instance. So there are so many things we still need to get right. In particular, we need to make progress across all the dimensions of exclusion together. So whether these are related to sex, to gender, to race, to sexual orientation, to disability, to religion, and so on. So we really do need to modernize our approach and embed it more deeply than we do. And there are many arguments for why this is so important. And for me, there are really four main arguments. I mean, the first thing is obviously it's just the right thing to do. It's a moral argument for equality, diversity, and inclusion. And in a way, that's where it all starts. It's just the right thing to do. I think the second thing is one more emancipatory reason, which is really that every member in our community, staff and students, should feel free to bring their full selves to work. You know, it's an argument about liberty in the end. It's about people being able to exercise their liberty as the individual that they really truly are, and not have to hide away things that about themselves which are intrinsic and important. So it's an argument about liberty. I think there's also the argument which Bron has made very forcefully in the paper, but here again, is that we have a commitment that everyone should be able to achieve their full potential. So it's an argument about rights, actually. It's the right of people to be able to thrive and to be able to, you know, achieve everything that they can in themselves through the environment and through the structures that we have in place. And then finally, it's this thing that it makes us all better. You know, by confronting these kinds of biases and unconscious things that go on all the time, microaggressions, all these kinds of things, it's really an argument about self-reflection. It's about becoming more whole as people. So it's a humanist argument as well. I think that's a very deep-seated thing for me, anyway. It makes us all better when we look at these things, address them honestly, and deal with them in ourselves as well. So I think what this strategy allows us to do is to focus on these 5 or 6 areas which are really important to us. And I think the work over the last year has really identified the priorities for us. Bullying and harassment still goes on in our community and you know, is unacceptable wherever it happens. The issue about the curriculum, decolonizing it, modernizing our curriculum, attainment gaps, right across BME, but there are other attainment gaps as well that we need to address as part of this commitment to allow everyone to flourish. Recruitment and progression, a well-known thing, of course, that we've been dealing with for a long time, but we still, as I explained earlier, need to make a lot of progress in disability inclusion. These are the sort of key priorities that have been identified, and they seem the right ones to me. And so finally, I just want to really thank the SSPP ED&I committee. It's a really impressive group of people for their really excellent work over the last year. Thank them on behalf of the community, and especially to Bron for leading this group. So with that, I'll stop, Bron. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Franz. That's great. I really appreciate your comments. If I could just take people quickly through the order for today. The first thing I'd like to say is my colleagues were saying to me, Bron, we need to organise a proper event with a live stream thing and a this, that and the other. And I was going, I actually think the most important thing is to get this work that that we've achieved and this plan out there for people to see, to comment on transparently, and enable us all to have a really important conversation about the way forward as soon as possible. So therefore, this is organised, as you will see, as a Teams meeting in which I'm delighted to say we now have 161 people. So I guess that will make, in some respects, the chat function really important. Not every one of 161 people will be able to ask a question that we can answer, but if you do have questions, please do put them in the chat. We'll have to do a kind of selective triaging of what we can answer, but if we can't answer it here, we will absolutely make every attempt to get back to you with an answer, because I think that's really important. So I just want to say a couple more things, and then I'm going to hand over to our workstream leads, who will give just a 2-minute summary of their stream and what they think they want to achieve in it, and what their core objectives are. And then we're also going to have a couple of 2-minute introductions from some students, Miranda Melcher, Shirley Yauda, Nascimento Tadiwa Nolovo, who are all going to speak a little bit on some of the important areas of student work that is contributing to these work streams. And then I want to open the floor for some questions and discussions at around 12:35. So, and then we will close at 1 o'clock. So the last couple of things, I guess, that I wanted to say are really about methodology. So to me, it was absolutely crucial, as Fran says, if we are to really gain traction in this area and to make effective progress, we needed to really systematise our approach to dealing with these issues. And the only way that I could see to do that really effectively was to create a work stream for each one of these intransigent problems. We asked Anna Guiazada to head up the inclusive culture work stream, because that is about how we actually change the whole culture of our approach towards inclusion and diversity within the faculty. And then more specifically, Yelka Boston and Susan Martin run the bullying and harassment stream. Decolonization of the curriculum is led by Funmi Olonasakan and Eka Ikpa. And then we have Fame Attainment, which is led at the moment by Anne Pollock, who has done a brilliant job with that. We had internal discussions about the word BAME attainment. Not everybody loves it, and there is a sense that perhaps it doesn't capture those who are also underrepresented. But there was also a view that a lot of Black and ethnic minority people are those who have most suffered from a lack of support to achieve to their full capacity within this university, and in recognition of that, we decided to retain that in the title for now. Recruitment and Progression, such an important area, led by Amanda Chisholm and Zoe Fernley. And lastly, Disability Inclusion, led by Luke Dickens, Carla Fine-Silver and Karina Thomas. You'll hear from one representative of those folks for each work stream in just a moment. So if I can now hand over, I think we're going to need those couple of extra minutes at 12 minutes past 12. I was going to take you through what I think are some of the really important interventions that we're proposing to introduce in the coming year to address what we see some of as being the most pressing shortcomings in our approach to equality, diversity and inclusion. But I think they'll probably come out in the discussions that the workstream leads will offer you, and the summary that they will offer you now. But if there's any of them that I think have not been pulled out sufficiently, I'll wrap up at the end with a couple of points on that. So without further ado, if I could hand over now to the first of our workstream leads, Anna Guiazada, who will just give a couple of minutes of summary to you on the workstream inclusive culture. Thank you, Anna.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Bron. Hello, everybody. So my name is Anna Gwiazda, and I'm leading the inclusive culture workstream. And very briefly, I want to present the key objectives and action points we are proposing. So this workstream is actively fostering or is trying to actively foster an inclusive culture in SSPP. An inclusive culture meaning that everything is based on respect, and we propose an environment where people feel valued and where diversity is embraced and celebrated. So the first objective of this workstream is to identify the existing culture in SSPP. To achieve this, we'll convene focus groups and discussions with staff and students. We'll also get in touch with established networks at King's to identify gaps and issues. The second objective of this workstream is to identify best practice strategies, codes of conduct, and training programs. Training is available in the faculty, but it's adopted inconsistently. So what we will try to do, we'll try to examine what is on offer, and we'll try to modify, and we'll try to put forward training programs which will promote best practice. So this is our first action point. The second is based on the establishment of a new role in the faculty, which is called EDI liaison partner. And it will be a contact person to deal with any cases which need immediate reaction, or any issues which need clarification. The third action is based on our understanding that we need to recognize excellence in equality, diversity, and inclusion. So we want to propose annual awards which would reward excellence and impact in this area. We also want to organize a series of events, but in addition to targeted EDI events, we also want to emphasize that an inclusive perspective should be taken when all types of events are organized and in all aspects of our work. So just to conclude, this work stream will aim to foster an inclusive and welcoming culture in SSPP. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anna. That's great. Next, we have Yolka Boston, who is going to give us a couple of minutes on bullying and harassment. Yolka.
Thanks, Bron. Thanks everyone for being here. It's great to see so many people, both from the student body and staff, to join us in this effort. So following Anna, who has made a clear case for inclusive culture, we believe that central to an inclusive environment is decisive action against all forms of bullying and harassment. Recently, the college has expressed a clear commitment to addressing bullying and harassment, and several initiatives have already been set in motion. And as a faculty, we're very much part of these conversations. But in the meantime, as we were having these conversations internally already, we are committed to do the following. With regard to prevention, we need clear messaging regarding acceptable and non-acceptable behavior, and we think we can do this via consistent and evidence-based EDI and active bystander training for all staff and students. Such training must be an integral part of student curricula and of staff developments whilst at King's. And in addition, all departments should have their own accessible codes of conduct that communicate expected standards of behavior and a zero tolerance for bullying and harassment. With regard to reporting, we will establish and publish clear faculty and department level processes for reporting incidences, and the college reporting process has recently been updated, and there's a new recent policy paper on the web pages which underpins, of course. To facilitate our own reporting processes, we will create the post of the EDI liaison partner, which Anna also mentioned. So this will be a skilled person who will be able to receive disclosures and report and have an advisory and supporting role. And hopefully such a skilled person will also consolidate access to support services. Transparency with regard to outcomes is really important to create trust in our processes. So we hope to improve transparency by a clear closing the circle on reporting outcomes mechanisms. And we will again work with the college EDI and HR teams to ensure that reporting data is collected and stored. And there's again a very clear steer from the college that they're now committed to collecting such data. We will need to, apart from storing reporting data, we will need to collect survey data on a yearly basis as well, necessary to monitor our progress and effectiveness. I think that's it in a nutshell. I'm happy to answer any questions later. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ilka. That's great. The next person we have is Eka, who I think is going to speak on decolonizing the curriculum. Thanks, Eka.
Thank you. Hello to everyone. Great to be here. Fumi Alonishaki and I are co-leading the decolonization of the curriculum work stream. And the central aim of this work stream is really to facilitate and support a space where we can safely question some of the assumptions that have underpinned approaches to higher education, you know, at King's, but even more widely. And we also think that this is actually an excellent opportunity for us to enhance the intellectual depth and breadth of our knowledge production, teaching and learning practices. So this is an opportunity for all of us. And I really very much hope that we take it in that spirit. It's vital we have these conversations, but it's also absolutely essential that we also identify practicable steps to addressing the issues that this raises. And for us, central elements of that are who's teaching, as well as how subjects are being taught. And the objective, what are we trying to get to here, is to create a more diverse and inclusive pedagogical experience. That's really at the heart of everything we're doing. That objective is, of course, at the heart of many of the principles here at King's. You think of the King's strategic vision, the King's education strategy, the King's international strategy as well. So what we're doing sits very much at the heart of what the college is trying to achieve. What we expect to do or support our colleagues to be able to do is to examine and explore existing pedagogical practices and curricular content, and to consider how and in what ways these might conceivably be made more diverse and inclusive. As a corollary to that, we also want to, of course, develop new pedagogical practices that will do particular things. Now, some of the things we've identified already would be building closer student communities, would also be encouraging greater diversification in curricular content, and also, of course, strengthening student-centered learning. So this would conceivably mean thinking about more diverse forms of assessment. Yeah, so I mentioned that this is what we're thinking at the moment. We are going to carry out exercises. That means we intend to hear from our community as to what else would support new pedagogical practices that help us achieve our aims. We also want to ensure we're opening a space for staff and students to work collaboratively around this. So we want to see students very central to these conversations as well, and students and staff from a range of cultural backgrounds, because the aim, of course, is to ensure that our students are developing agency in their own learning and also actively contributing to the learning materials and the knowledge sources that we use. And so some of the actions, what we're trying to do here is create a space. That's the purpose of this workstream. We want to create a space where we can freely but respectfully have conversations about what all of this means and what we can do together to drive change. It's character review of the curricula as well, and assessments as another action point we have. Also to develop support that staff require to make these changes, including assistance in updating modules. That's another action that we intend to carry out. We'll also work to incorporate student ideas and perspectives actively. And we've seen some very important work being done by colleagues who will be speaking after us just now. We also intend to create training and resources on decolonization of the academy, pedagogy, and inclusive classrooms. Of course, we're going to draw on the very important work that many of our colleagues have already been doing here. So this is not intended at all to displace that incredible work, but to build on it, to elevate it as well, and to build connection so that we can all benefit from that incredible work that is going on. And of course, we'll work collaboratively with our colleagues in the other work streams as well. Okay, so that's it from me, and I'm very happy for discussion. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Now, we've still got a number of people to get through, and the students as well, and I'd want to leave time for discussion. So if I can ask, we have Anne Pollock on BAME attainment, then Amanda, I think you're speaking on recruitment and progression, and Luke is speaking on disability inclusion. So if I could ask you to give a short and pithy summary so that we can hear from the students and have the questions, I'd be very grateful. Thanks very much. So Anne, over to you.
Absolutely, Bron. And I have the advantage of one of the students who will be speaking has been really fundamental in guiding these actions that we have in mind. And so in a sense, I can get some double time there. So thank you very much, Shirley, for your leadership on this, and then also for being here to share our experiences. So the Fame Attainment Gap obviously has been a widely discussed topic across the college, not always as productively as it might be. I think in part because we don't always recognize that students come with the same credentials, the same capacities, and it's the institution that's falling short in helping all students to attain their potential equally. And so, you know, really kind of shifting that understanding from often, I think academics tend to see students as having deficits that need to be ameliorated, and really recognizing that the institution has deficits that need to be ameliorated so that we can foster success across the board. We've particularly focused on a couple of things around getting a sense of best practices that have been happening across the United Kingdom as well as across King's, because SSPP is doing worse than our colleagues across the college and our colleagues across the country, and we should instead be leading here. And in order to do that, we are collaborating with students to coordinate efforts, so kind of on smaller scales within global health and social medicine, where I am, hoping to increase the crosstalk and collaboration with other departments who also don't need to reinvent the wheel as we work together to help students reach their full potential.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Anne. That's really helpful. And now we have Amanda, who is going to talk about recruitment and progression.
Thanks, Bron. Thanks, everyone, for attending. Zoe and I are going to do a quick elevator pitch. I just wanted to quickly introduce myself. I'm Amanda. I'm at the School of Security Studies, and Zoe Fernley, my co-chair, is the Director of Administration for the faculty. And we're really pleased to be leading this work stream on recruitment and progression. We want to acknowledge, like everyone else has so far, and that's acknowledged in the strategic report, that the faculty does have a documented problem with recruitment and employment of BAME disability, working class, LGBTQI, and women, who are generally underrepresented, but more significantly so at senior levels. And like Franz and Bron and everyone else has said, this lack of representation negatively impacts upon our teaching and learning, as well as produces of world-class researchers. So we plan we can see these problems and patterns that play out across professional services as well. Zoe, do you want to chime in quickly?
Very happy to, Amanda. So, well, really nice to be here. I think some of you do know me. I'm Zoe Fernley. I'm the Director of Administration for the faculty. So, I mean, I think it's fair to say that addressing this problem is neither easy nor straightforward. You know, there remain really stubborn preconceptions in higher education about, you know, who we value as educators, what a good student looks like, and what we value as research. These are preconceptions that often materialise at recruitment and in the way we write job descriptions, the way we approach potential candidates, evaluate CVs, you know, engage with applicants at an interview stage, and also how we establish criteria for determining who would make, you know, the best fit for academic and professional services posts. Through the work stream that Amanda and I are leading, we really hope to envisage new structures in the ways we hire and recruit staff that consider applicants who don't necessarily come from traditional or Anglo-male privileged routes into higher education, and those colleagues who are having important impact outside what we would normally value in colleagues. We also see this work stream as an opportunity.
Diversity strategy, but
someone isn't muted, sorry. We also see this work stream as an opportunity to reevaluate the way that we recruit professional services staff, but also I hope as an opportunity to re-examine progression and development opportunities for professional services staff. Amanda, back to you, I think.
Thank you, Zoe. So going forward, we have a number of key initiatives that we've documented in the report. I'm not going to talk about them all now. I'm just going to mention 3 here quickly, and that's to, like everyone else has mentioned, identify any patterns and themes on recruitment and progression across all departments of who's performing particularly well in these areas, but also those departments that could use more support to bring them up to the high standard that we all aspire to. To agree in consultation with the broader community on an implementation plan for the school departments and PS teams that include best practices around mentoring, work shadowing, broader career planning alongside with the recruitment process. And to finally standardize and mandate appropriate training on EDI for staff on recruitment and appointment panels and for those in mentoring and management roles with measurable outputs to ensure the training is actually having the desired impact. Zoe, I'll leave you to conclude.
Thanks very much, Amanda. So, I mean, I'm sure if you haven't already done so, we really encourage you to read the strategic plan, and we're really keen for people to get involved in this work stream. So please do get in contact with either me or Amanda if you're interested in being part of this work stream, or indeed have any ideas on how we can ensure further inclusivity in the planning and implementation of all these initiatives. Thanks, Bron.
Thanks very much, Zoe. That's great. Luke, over to you for the disability. If I have Luke. Do I have Luke? Maybe he's have a problem with his mute button. He's there.
Am I unmuted now?
Yep, you're unmuted now, Luke.
Apologies, everyone. Hi, sorry.
Carry on.
I'm co-leading the disability work stream on this with Carla Fine-Silver in education and Karina Thomas in HR. Our sort of aim with our work here is to really meet the kind of obligations of the disability charter that King's does have in place, to kind of uphold them and embed them in our kind of everyday working environments and practices. And we're really thinking about that both kind of materially in our environments and also culturally, and removing barriers, creating enabling environments in that regard. And I think we're really keen to have disability, which is something that's not necessarily at the centre of our reflections about EDI, right in the mix with these things. When we're talking about disability, we're thinking across a really quite wide range of things. So we're thinking about specific learning disabilities and difficulties. We're thinking about mental health, as well as kind of physical and sensory impairments, long-term health conditions that both students and staff experience, you know, surprisingly widely. COVID has kind of exacerbated a lot of these kind of disabling environments, but in many ways presents quite a key opportunity for us to do some rethinking in this regard. And so the kinds of actions that we've come up with.
Someone doesn't have their microphone muted. Mute, please.
Thank you.
think you can mute all, can there we go. Sorry. I'm just going to talk loudly, should I? So our actions. So we've got some key areas of actions that really pick up on what I've just said about COVID, really. So online teaching is an area that we're really focusing on as improving inclusion for both students and staff experiencing disabilities. Carla's put together a really important piece of work in that regard, and I'm sure her report will be part of our kind of resources that we circulate. So it's certainly an opportunity to think about that right now as a priority. A second area is about the return to campus, which is presenting some particular challenges for both students and staff experiencing disabilities. That again, we're trying to do some work there to get those experiences taken more centrally into account and consideration there. We're aware of quite a lot of kind of resourcing and services at King's with quite a lot of potential to support students and staff experiencing disability, but that's because we are looking at this stuff, and one of the issues that we're trying to tackle here is about awareness raising around that provision so that people can access it, because it is kind of there already, as well as improving it. And another area that we're really keen to get going on is stuff around personal tutoring and trying to pick up much sooner students experiencing disabilities of various kinds, health conditions and impairments, rather than, which is quite often the case, their issues kind of becoming apparent quite late in their kind of studies. So, and we're trying to pick up that early, support teaching staff to work with students experiencing those things, and to sustain that support more robustly over their studies. So, and there are other things there. I'm really welcoming our conversation around that, and as everyone has kind of said, this is open to your thoughts and ideas and discussions. It's a starting point, and there are other things in the sort of longer term we'd like to do. Thanks, Bron.
Thank you very much, Luke. That's great. Could I ask, I'm conscious of the time, could I ask our three, I think there's three student reps, or perhaps just two, I'm not sure who's on the call because I can't see it all. Miranda Melcher, Shirley Yaldo Nascimento, I will get that right one day, Shirley, and Tadiwa Nadovlu to come on camera if you can and just give us a very brief summary of a couple of the things that you've been doing in terms of student contributions to this work, and then I want to open the floor to questions from people. And I just want to say a couple of things at the end about the plan and how we take it forward. So Shirley, if you're there, and Miranda, if you're there, that would be helpful if you could do that now. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Miranda. Should I go first or should Shirley start?
No, you can go first, Miranda. I was second in the order, so.
Cool. I'm Miranda. I'm a PhD in Defence Studies and a member of the EDI committees, both for War Studies and Defence Studies. In War Studies, I'm the working group lead for disability and with particular focus on COVID. And for DSD, I'm the lead on PhD experience. For War Studies, so far, we've actually done a lot of really cool work with disability. In that committee, there's a lot going on in the War Studies EDI committee. But for disability, we've focused on improving training around inclusive teaching practices. So I'm actually delivering a workshop on that tomorrow through King's Academy. And we've just applied for funding to make it mandatory for GTAs across the department going forward. We're also looking at the disability and accessibility aspects of the department when and if we actually go back to Strand. And then on DSD, the PhD side, we found that there's quite an issue with inclusive culture as PhDs in Defence Studies. And we've got a great working group together that's just starting off to figure out how we can improve that, taking existing things like the peer mentoring program that started earlier this term and extending it for PhDs in Defence Studies and across the School of Security Studies.
Well, that's fantastic. That is wonderful work, and I really, really appreciate that, Amanda. That's Miranda. That's terrific. Shirley, could I have a few words from you, please?
Yeah, can everybody see me? So hi, I'm Shirley. I'm a third-year undergrad student, and I'm also co-president of the student-led JSSM BAM. And as Anne said, I've had the pleasure to work on everything BAM related for the past 3 years. And during the summer, we worked on a couple of reports regarding student experience and attainment gap and trying to find best practices that culminated actually in the creation of a steering group, like we're now called the Anti-Racist Steering Group. And it's both a student and a staff group. And what we intend to do is work on 2 areas. So shortening or closing the BME attainment gap through mentoring schemes and through like understanding better where are we failing, where are people struggling the most, but also decentralizing the curriculum. And notice that that's different from diversifying, because we understand that just putting a couple of more different readings is not enough to tackle the core issues. And we intend to do that by creating discussions where staff and student can talk about the colonial practices and racial discrimination, and also by bringing in more scholars from the Global South to ultimately try to create a more inclusive community where we can all feel seen, heard, and that will inherently improve student experience. And yeah, in a nutshell, that's me.
Fantastic. Thank you, Shirley. Okay, that's brilliant. I really appreciated everyone's summaries. I appreciate it's difficult to do these things in just a couple of minutes, but we wanted to give everyone a kind of flavour of what we've been up to and the depth of the work that's going on in each work stream at the present moment. What I would say is this: the EDI, the SSPP EDI strategic plan is 30 pages in length, and you will see if you look carefully in every work stream that there is a lot of condensed information there about what the problem is, what we think the prospective solution is, and what we propose as interventions. And for those of you who are thinking, well, you know, what's really changing here? If you actually look in the interventions, you will see that there is considerable change. So there is a completely different approach to training. There is a different approach to what we would do with training. There is a proposal that has now been approved at faculty level to actually make participation in various forms of training what we would call a hurdle to progression. So in other words, you won't be able to proceed in this institution if you haven't achieved a successful completion of these important training initiatives and so on. So quite considerable changes in terms of the robustness of our commitment to implement change. So I hope that you will read the strategic plan in detail and be able to capture some of that. Our next steps, I just want to say this because it's very important. The committee has established the work stream and the governance of this work in the faculty, but we are also very aware that within departments there are already existing EDI committees that we have worked with already and which we want to work with collaboratively in taking all this forward in the new year. So there is a lot of work that's already been done at a departmental level. I guess we wanted to set the strategic agenda, and now we want to pull people's expertise, initiatives and work that they're already implementing at departmental level in under this umbrella to formalise our commitment and take this work forward as effectively as we can. So we'll also be, as we've noted from our 2 contributors, Miranda and Shirley, doing everything that we can to support the student initiatives around EDI that we already have, and we see those, and indeed contributions from PS staff as well, as being absolutely core to this agenda. So we have set the work streams, we've set the strategy now, and we will be pulling in all the expertise that we can to gain traction on these and to deliver the interventions that we've outlined in the strategic plan going forward. We've also created new EDI web pages, and they are available online. Tala, I'm sure, will put a link to that in the chat, where you can see the strategic plan is there. You can also see the work that we've done on improving inclusion in education around COVID. That piece led by Carla, which is really excellent. Have a look at that. So thank you for that. Now, as I said, we're not going to get through 161 questions. However, I would encourage people to please ask now any burning questions they may have on this, and I will answer them myself or throw them to someone else to answer if I need to. So the floor is open for questions. So please put your question in the chat. and we will be able to answer them. Or if anybody wants to come on camera, as it were, and ask their question, they're welcome to do that as well. I don't know if that'll crash the system. Maybe it will. I hope not. Okay, so let me have a look here. Feel free to ask a question. Okay, so how can, this is a question, how can PhD students become involved in one of the work streams? Well, that's a very good question. And what we want to do is we want to try and arrange it so that, in a sense, because we've worked on work stream, because we're doing this via work stream, which is a different kind of model, part of the reason why I wanted to do it that way is because I want people who are passionately interested in different things, and that may not be every aspect of EDI. So it may be that you're really interested in disability, or you're really interested in bullying and harassment. So what we want to do is try and capture people's expertise and passion in certain areas. And what I would invite you to do is make contact with the workstream lead to propose that you want to be involved and what your skills or expertise might be, or what you think you can bring to the discussion. And then the workstream leads will begin to think about how you might fit into the delivery program, if I could put it that way, and how you can contribute to making an effective change. So a little question there, who is on your committee? That is on the front page of the committee members are on the front page of the strategic plan. How are you tracking progress against actions? Will this be published centrally on a regular basis? Yes, one of the really important things for this work is that we have to be able to evaluate the change that we think we're delivering. So the first thing is to create a number of benchmarks for our interventions, and then to be able to report against those benchmarks each year. So that is the intention for taking this work forward. Yeah, so the names and the roles are on the front of the strategic plan. Read a number of pieces recently suggesting that we should move away from referring to an attainment gap and instead describe it as an awarding gap. Has there been any discussion on this at SSPP and or college level? Yes, there has. Anne Pollock, would you like to say something about that, if you can?
Sure. Yes. I mean, this is exactly what I was referring to, right? With this idea that sometimes when we say the attainment gap, it makes it sound like the fault is with the students. Whereas if it's the assessment gap, then that means that the institution is failing to assess excellence in the way that it might otherwise do. I mean, I think that the words are really important, and we're, without kind of letting them kind of catch us up, trip us up and prevent us from making progress, we are also very interested in developing a toolkit that will provide people with good vocabulary and kind of some sense of why certain terms are used and why, some particular frameworks that are useful. And this is a great example, right? So I'm not so much into kind of saying, okay, we must completely replace one set of languages with another, but I think it's such an excellent opportunity to really think critically about, okay, what is the language that we're using saying about the kind of how we understand the problems and the solutions. And so here it's really connected to what Eka was saying and, about decolonizing the curriculum and to other questions as well.
Okay, thanks, Anne. That's great. Now, another couple of really great question from Andrea. What obstacles to implementation do you anticipate, and how do you suggest to overcome them? I would say, Andrea, that most of the obstacles to implementation are things that we have grappled with over the past year. So, to my mind, we were ambitious about what we wanted to do with the plan. So, for instance, making training a hurdle to progression is a huge cultural change. And we worked incredibly hard to win wide support for those kind of changes over the last year. So I am hoping that in many respects, some of the hardest work that has to be done in really trying to, introduce concerted cultural change, the work hasn't been done, but I think that the most difficult thing often is to secure a kind of comprehensive cross-faculty commitment to make change. That's actually the difficult part. And then it's a question of putting the rubber on the road, if I could put it that way, and actioning all of these interventions and making sure that those people who are involved in the work streams and committed to delivering that make progress against those objectives. So there are always obstacles, but I actually think the biggest obstacles, I hope, have been overcome, and we're seeing that at the highest level in the college. Evelyn Welsh and Richard Trembath have just published, well, are in the process of working on, I should say, a new policy on bullying and harassment, which I have to say, when I saw it in senior management team, I was absolutely struck by how robust that policy is, working at the highest level of HR. So there is an absolute commitment to modelling behaviour at the highest level in this college and instituting real change now. So I think that also will drive this agenda forward in really effective ways in the coming year. Next question, on page 15 and 16 of the document, it mentions an aim to secure funding, whether from faculty, college, outside philanthropists, or a combination thereof, for BAME studentships. And then also on page 16 for securing faculty support. What plans are there for funding scholarships for BAME candidates? This is at PGR, etc. This is a really important initiative, I think. I learned a huge amount of this actually from Anne, of course, Anne Pollock. And, you know, one of the things that Anne made clear to me is that a real impediment for a lot of students who come from unrepresented backgrounds is that they often don't have opportunities to work in the academy in the same way that other students do. And so while some more privileged students are doing research internships and so on, GTAing and the like, a lot of students don't have those opportunities, and they are subsidising their work by, you know, working in the local fish and chip shop or something like that, which really doesn't add much to their educational experience. And Anne was suggesting to me that one of the ways that we can improve that experience for a lot of BAME and underrepresented students is to try and secure for them some studentships that would enable them to do perhaps some paid work, but more in the academy that's relevant to their studies and so forth. And so the intention is that we would try and really commit to finding dedicated sources of funding. And we think in this current environment that's actually possible to do at either faculty level, but I also think it's possible to source some of that through philanthropy externally as well, because there are a lot of people who are committed to sort of closing the attainment gap, if I could put it that way.
Okay, so thank you very much, Bron. I think that's quite actually comprehensive. Just to kind of flag that the Anti-Racist Steering Group in GHSM has applied for seed funding to the college level to try to get some of this stuff going, which we hope we actually will be able to then use as a track record to get funding from grant agencies who are interested in improving pedagogy for the global health and social medicine workforce for the future, and so on. And I'm also in conversation with folks in major gifts. Many of our alumni are also concerned about making sure that they have a diverse workforce that they can hire, that is ready to be the leaders that an increasingly global world needs, and so on. And so, working with the kind of major gifts, I think, is also a key thing. So working both to develop some of these things enough that we can get external funding from kind of traditional funding mechanisms, but also really relying on alumni and other partners is going to be important as well.
Thank you, Anne. Okay, moving on to the next question, which I note with great interest, having been the person who was responsible for putting this committee together. The question is, I noted most speakers and workstream leads appear to be women. Great to see, but how can men contribute so that heavy lifting in the background doesn't also fall disproportionately on disadvantaged people, likewise for white, able-bodied, etc. colleagues? I have to report that in recruiting for this committee, I actually sent around and sent out sort of invitations for involvement of as many men as I possibly could find, because I thought it was so important, and the response was a pretty deafening silence. So that was concerning to me, and I actually had to go out and invest a bit more energy actually in finding some of the men who have worked on this committee already. So what I would say is that I warmly encourage the involvement of more men in the work stream work as we take this forward. But I think if you're interested in doing that, you have to put yourself forward and suggest that you're ready to take on that kind of work. In terms of disadvantage for people who are more or less able-bodied, we were very concerned to make sure, for example, when we did the disability inclusion work stream, that this was not led by people who were able-bodied, who we felt perhaps wouldn't have the right insights into the experience of being disabled. And so we have we have tried to draw as much as we can on people whose experience speaks to the issues that they're addressing in their work stream. But we would certainly welcome involvement from anyone. This is an open, sort of transparent process, and we welcome all the people who might be interested in working on any one of these work streams to take this agenda forward. The names are in the list on the first page of the plan, just a list of names, not who leads them. My apologies for that. If you all look in the chat right now, you will see that there are the names of those people who lead each work stream so that you can watch quite easily. How do issues around precarity, e.g. short-term, part-time contracts, figure into this work? That is a good question. I wonder if that's something that perhaps Zoe or Amanda might like to say something about, if they're still there.
Yeah, I'm still here. I mean, I suppose my comment would be that we're still in the very early days, if we're honest, about this recruitment and progression work stream. And I think Amanda and I have just been thinking, we're meeting next week to think about how we take this forward next. And I think we need to, one of my, kind of key things at the forefront of my mind is how we draw in people on different types of contracts, with different views, with different kind of issues into this work stream. And I think that's that Amanda and I discussing over the next couple of weeks. So I would encourage people to kind of get in touch with me and Amanda if you've got questions or kind of issues like that, or indeed want to get involved, because we are looking for ways to draw to make sure we're representative of this type of issue, but also that we draw people from across the faculty into our discussions. I don't know if Amanda has anything to add.
Yeah, thank you, Zoe. Just to add quickly that, one of our key initiatives, firstly, is to do broader research on benchmarking, not only across the faculty of where best practices and initiatives around flexible working, but also recruitment and progression are happening at King's, but also more broadly across higher education. So like Zoe said, just echoing that, welcome feedback at this stage and any interest to further get involved. Thank you.
Button. Okay, thanks very much. There's a couple more questions on PS recruitment. I didn't quite understand this, Karen, I'm sorry. How are you going to measure PS recruitment when, there's so many questions coming up, I can't read my own chat. When education recruitment is done centrally through the shared recruitment process.
Do you want me to respond quickly to that, Bron?
Yes, if you could, Zoe. Sorry, I didn't.
That's fine. I mean, the shared recruitment process is a process that's managed centrally for the recruitment of programme and senior programme officers currently. So I suppose just two very quick things. One, there is a review underway of the shared recruitment process just to see, how effectively it's delivering on some of the objectives that were set out at the outset of it about 18 months ago. And I guess secondly, we will, that as Amanda says, we're going to need to look across the a kind of range of areas. And shared recruitment's one of them. We know who has been brought in via that process. One of the things that we'll need to do is look at how effective that's been at challenging some of the problems that we've identified through this work stream. And if necessary, we'll need to draw the people who run shared recruitment into those discussions, and we'll need to kind of feed our views into the ongoing review of that process. So, I mean, we need to bear in mind it's a really important process, but it brings in a very specific group of staff into the currently, and obviously there's a kind of whole range of staff that are brought in through other mechanisms as well that we'll need to kind of keep in mind.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm conscious of time and the fact that we have to close in a moment. We will get back to you with these other questions that we have not been able to answer. There's a couple of things on linking you know, linking the web page, which is really useful. Thank you very much. And a couple of things on recruitment and progression. But I guess I want to maybe try and pick up on, yeah, I mean, you know, Daniel Schiller, Daniel, why can I not say your name? Do you know, I actually appointed you into your job, so you'd think I'd be able to say your name, wouldn't you? But anyway, absolutely good job here in raising this question about these cross-culture, sort of cross-cutting hires that we might have, race and racialization, Black studies, Indigenous studies, etc. And I think that's a really important and, you know, and potentially really exciting way to take that forward. And that's the kind of thing that we need to think about as we move ahead with this. I guess my primary concern here has been to address some of the really, you know, unpleasant systemic problems that we've got in a very concerted and committed way first, and then to move into perhaps more ambitious, forward-looking strategies about how we can take this work forward in terms of real cultural change, pedagogical change, and so on in the way that you describe. So that is really helpful. But there was one other, where is it? Andrea's question. Here it is. So perhaps we can just close with this one. So she says, thank you very much. The strategy is excellent, shows the hard work that's been done. The worry is that ED&I initiatives often stumble at the level of middle management. Advertising the strategy and encouraging everyone to implement the recommendations bottom down at every level as you were doing with this soft launch is going to be critical to its continued success. I absolutely agree with that. So having a high level strategy, making it work in practice will only happen if we are able to marshal together the strengths that we have right across the faculty, all the way from undergraduate students to, you know, postgraduate students, GTAs, really important and key professional services staff who I value tremendously. We need to pull those people on board and pump all of your expertise into driving these work streams forward in the most effective way that and dare I say, joined up way that we possibly can. But I think having committed leadership at the top makes a huge difference, and having oversight of these work streams and what they can achieve is also really important. Having a set of objectives, milestones and timelines for achieving them is also really important, because then people can stay focused on what they need to produce when, so that we can actually produce the results in EDI that we all want to see. So if I could just perhaps conclude on that note, I'd like to thank everybody very much for taking part today. I really appreciate your involvement. I want this to be a transparent and inclusive process delivering the strategic plan. And as far as I'm concerned, the work has just started now. And in January, we'll be looking to take each of these work streams forward in a committed way and pulling in all of your expertise and commitment to delivering that. So if you're happy with that, if everybody is happy with that, I'm aware everyone is now 1 minute overdue for their lunch and probably desperate for that. We will capture all the chat and we'll get back to you. And please do, if you feel passionately about one of these issues or another, do get in touch with your workstream leads, and then we will gather all that information and offers of help together in the new year and begin to then set our expertise against our objectives and see how we can together take this forward for maximal success, I hope. So thank you very much for all of your involvement, for everyone who spoke today and everyone who contributed, whether in the chat or just listened. I really appreciate it. So thank you very much, and I look forward to working with you all on this in the new year. All the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.